It's 2 o'clock. And like I said, this workshop, we're going to have some fun. It's going to be a little more lighthearted. And we're going to talk about, well, probably the purpose for Stormwater Awareness Week. In fact, let me give you a little history. This is our 12th year of doing Stormwater Awareness Week. And if you do the math, that would put us right around 2011 is when we started. And going back to 2011, what was going on in the industry? Well, we were just coming off of the Great Recession, right? And one of the reasons we started Stormwater Awareness Week is that nobody had training dollars back then. In fact, they're probably still somewhat tight, but people didn't have training dollars. Especially municipalities didn't. There was just no room in the budgets for that. And there were always these national, statewide, regional shows. But if you've been to any of those, they're kind of pricey. And maybe a couple people from your organization can go, but you certainly can't send everybody. It gets really pricey. The other thing was YouTube was becoming really quite something back in 2011. So we looked at the YouTube model and go, you know what? That's all free. That's all free. And how could we make stormwater education free in our industry? And so what we did was we tapped on the shoulders of some of our colleagues, even traditionally, some of the people we compete with, for business. And we said, you know what? We're all in the stormwater industry. How about if we educate ourselves? How about if we put on an education program that people can benefit from, that's real down to earth, real connected to their needs, and we do this educational program? And how about if we make it for free? In other words, what if all of us just dedicate an hour to give a free workshop? And that's how it started. And of course, back then, it was mostly in person. In fact, the first year, it was just Northern and Central California that we were doing these live workshops around Northern and Central California. Basically, the Bay Area and the greater Sacramento, Stockton areas is where we were at. Well, a lot of people in Southern California heard about that event, and they were begging us to say, hey, could we possibly get in on the action? And so the next year, we opened it up and had workshops in Southern California as well. Again, it was mostly in person, but that was our start. And then probably around 2016, we started to do keynote sessions. In fact, one of our biggest keynote sessions at that time, I think it was in 2016, we did a video documentary from SeaWorld in San Diego, and we did that. And we started to do some online stuff. And then each year we added a few more online programs. And then, of course, you know what happened in 2020. COVID, right? And fortunately, because we had already been dabbling with the online, we were already situated and ready to go with online. And 2020, we didn't miss a Stormwater Awareness Week. In fact, it was all online, as you can imagine. And since COVID has kind of waned, it has remained online. And the biggest reason is people don't have to drive anywhere for a workshop. And the presenters can literally get an audience now, as we mentioned at the beginning, from all over the nation. And even now, many places of the world are sending people to our workshops. And so that's been really cool. And we're hoping that it just continues. And it truly is a grassroots movement. WGR, we organize it. But if you've noticed, we try and work really hard to stay in the background, and all of the branding and everything, you'll have to look really, really hard to find WGR there. Maybe our email addresses is about all that you will see of WGR. And we really have tried to make this truly something that's being shared by the industry. So anyways, that's a little bit about Stormwater Awareness Week. And as I mentioned, one of the biggest reasons for Stormwater Awareness Week is actually the topic we're going to be talking about today, and that's people's need to have professional development hours, continuing education. It goes under different aliases. In fact, when we started this 11 years ago, they weren't called PDHs. They were called PDUs. You remember that? Professional Development Units. That was in fact, we even had another program that we've kind of morphed it all into it called PDU Week. Now it's PDHs, and now I'm seeing more and more continuing education or CEUs and that type of thing. But basically continuing education. Now, continuing education can be, well, let's put it this way, inconvenient and a bit of a grind. Yeah, you're probably like me. If you're a certificate holder and that annual renewal comes, you go, oh, I got to get my PDHs, right? You probably go through that just like most people do. Well, I got a little poll here. I want to launch a poll, and I want to see who I'm talking to today. So we are a smaller group, but I'm going to launch this poll, and it's 3 questions, I believe. So go ahead and answer these questions just to give me a little idea who we're talking to. Plus, I'll share the results here in a moment. So go ahead and answer those questions. Question 1, what credential do you hold that requires continuing education? Now, some of you might not have any. Some of you might have something that's not listed, but go ahead and put it in if you do. And then question number 2 is, how many PDHs or PDUs or whatever you call it do you need a year? And some of you just might not remember, like half the time I don't remember how many I need either, but put it in if you know. And or pick the closest number. I might be off on some of those. And then the third one is, how do you like to get your PDHs? In person, online, volunteer hours, work experience, the easiest way possible. In fact, that one you can answer multiple questions on that last question. And the funnest, I know that's not a word, but the funnest way possible. All right, so just give you another moment to answer, and we'll close it here in just a second. If you haven't answered them, put it in there. All right, let's see, just another second. If you haven't answered, go for it. All right, let's end the poll, and I'm going to share the results. Now, can you see that? Somebody let me know if you can see the results. Anybody able to see it? Oh, great, good. All right, so let's see who we're talking to today. Well, we got 4 CPES, 2 CPSWQs, that's cool. 3 SESWIs, 1 SciSec, that's a good mix. Good, I'm glad. And then we got 3 others. Those 3 people that answered other, what certification do you have? If you don't mind, either put it in the chat or unmute.
Oh, this is Alicia from Salt Lake City. I have an RSI. It's a Utah-specific certification. I'm working on my SciSec right now as well.
All right. All right. Anybody else? All right, and we got a few that don't have any certification at this point. That's fine. How many PDHs do you need? All right, we got a few people, they don't need any. If you, like me, can't remember until I go and log in and it says, oh, you got 12. 6, 8, 12, 16, yeah. It probably depends on what certification you have. And how do you like to get your PDHs? All right, about half the group in person. Yeah, in person really is hard to beat. Online is certainly convenient. In fact, almost everybody likes online. Volunteer hours, yeah. In fact, we'll talk a little bit about that today. Work experience. Unfortunately, or maybe it's fortunately, I don't know, it depends on your perspective, but it seems more and more the certifications are eliminating that work experience option. I think the EcoCert, it's now EcoCert, SciSec, I think they still allow work experience in that one. In the easiest way possible, yes, of course, especially since when it comes crunch time and you got to renew your certification, and it's like, oh, I need PDHs. in the funnest way possible. Yes, yes. That is also good. All right. Well, awesome. Good. Thank you for participating in that poll. All right. Well, let's talk about first some of the requirements with this. What we're going to do in this workshop is first we're going to talk about what qualifies as a PDH, and then second is we're going to give you at least six creative ideas for PDHs. And then before we end it, I want to hear from you. Be thinking about maybe what was your best PDH experience you've ever had? And especially if it's something I didn't cover today, I'd love to hear about it. So if you can think of something, I'll try to reserve some time. We should have time at the end of today or end of this workshop to cover some of that. All right. So what qualifies as a PDH? Well, it depends on who you ask, literally. And by that, I mean mostly what credential program are you under? Because it will vary and does vary a little bit credential to credential or the certifying organization to a different organization. They'll have some different requirements. We'll cover some of the main ones today, but by no means all of the PDH requirements will be covered today. And ultimately, though, I have found that the decision is largely up to you, the certificate holder. You know, for these Stormwater Awareness Week classes, we will often get people who say, can you give me a certificate? I need a certificate. And we try to oblige as much as possible. Now, it is a free program. And to give out 3,800 certificates is a little bit daunting. But we do try to oblige as much. But the main thing that we tell a lot of people is you really don't need a certificate, at least unless you want to hang something on the wall. There's other ways to go about it, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But really, it's up to you to determine what qualifies and what doesn't qualify within the confines of what your organization, your certifying organization, is allowing. All right, so let's go over the requirements of a couple of the dominant organizations that are providing these underlying certifications. So one of them, and in no particular order, but the first one we're going to talk about is EnviroCert. EnviroCert has several stormwater certifications that they offer, and in fact, we're only going to talk about 3 that are mentioned in the construction general permit, but they offer many other certifications beyond this. So in particular, we'll talk about the Certified Professional Erosion Sediment Control, CPESC, the Certified Erosion Sediment and Stormwater Inspector, which is a QSP underlying certification. The CPESC is a QSD. And then the Certified Professional in Stormwater Quality, that's also a QSD underlying certification. These are the 3 certifications that are mentioned in the construction general permit as meeting the prerequisite, or what used to be called the underlying certification. Now, going to EnviroCert's standards and their basically their definitions, they say that they recognize 2 categories of professional development activities. One is what they call general, and that's where we're going to really take a closer look at. The other one is very specific, and that's volunteer work for them, not others, but for them, for the EnviroCert International. And I have a CPESC certification, and I get their emails, and they are periodically providing opportunities to do a volunteer service, whether it's reviewing some new training material or being a trainer or helping at one of their conferences or something like that. There are opportunities to volunteer. But where I really want to look at, though, is general. So let's take a look at that. And under general, they have 4 subcategories. The first one is continuing education. And according to them, this includes activities where the certified professional is participating in educational events related to their certificate. So that's a real important phrase right there. Learning events can take place in a formal or, in fact, underscore that, or informal venues. Now, we're going to mostly look at this subcategory of continuing education because a lot of the PDHs that people will be claiming would fall under that. And we'll take a closer look at that. But other opportunities under their general category include learning developer. And in fact, I get credit for this class. That's why we do these classes, right? Here's this, what it says: the certificate holder is disseminating certification relevant knowledge or skills to groups or individuals during learning events, i.e. a Stormwater Awareness Week workshop. In fact, that might be a great reason why you next year might want to give a workshop. To qualify, the learning developer must actively engage in researching and preparing event content or delivering the content at the learning event. Credit can only be received for original material prepared by the developer and for the first time delivery of the material. So if I'm always, given the same old talk, the first time that I develop it and present it, I can claim that as credit as a PDH. Now, if I'm giving somebody else's talk that they developed, then I can't count that under learning developer. A somewhat related category is learning reviewer, and that's where you have a person who's assisting the developer in doing maybe an in-depth technical review of the material they're going to present. And then there is a fourth category for those of you who are really ambitious, and that's being an author. The publication of a peer-reviewed book, article, or other document which explains the technical knowledge on a related subject. And so maybe it's a newsletter. Maybe you guest write for WGR's Monthly Dirt or some other periodical. Maybe you're writing a book, a textbook or something. So those are opportunities. But what the more common of the four is that first one, education. So EnviroCert provides some examples, and then they provide some non-examples. So let's look at the examples. Participating in organized education or training events, including conferences, seminars, tours, field days, workshops. Sounds like Stormwater Awareness Week, right? Of course, there's a lot of other things we're going to take a look at in that list, and this is really that first bullet there is where a lot of my creative PDH ideas come from. And so we'll probably spend some more time looking at that. Participating on online course or webinar. Again, that's kind of like this. But, there's lots of other opportunities. I get them in my email all the time from the stormwater industry. So there's opportunities all the time for that. Attending a college or university course. Attending a technical sales presentation, which has a relevant, in-depth technical topic. So yeah, sales pitches can qualify as PDHs, but in the non-examples, we'll see when they don't. And then engaging in self-study with technical journals or other authoritative sources. That bullet there too is one of the things I point to for some of my creative ideas. So we'll come back to some of this. Now, continuing education, but these are non-examples according to EnviroCert, where the content is just not certification relevant. I got to be careful here because, it may be indirectly relevant, but, it could be an environmental topic. But if my certification is in erosion and sediment control, then a talk on microplastics would probably not be certification relevant, for me anyways. Now, a CPSWQ, stormwater professional or certified professional stormwater quality, that very well might be certification relevant for them. So So it needs to be relevant to your particular credential. Where it's just a cursory overview is provided. If it's too superficial, no, that's not counted as continuing education. A third one is where the main focus is ordering the vendor's products. Okay, that was the non-example of the sales pitch. Now, I've been in sales pitches. In fact, we've even had some Stormwater Awareness Week workshops this week where they're largely talking about their products, but they're using their products to talk about a more in-depth subject. Like we had a couple that were talking about passive treatment. And yes, they sell and make and sell products that are passive treatment, but they were teaching how passive treatment works, when to use it, how to comply with the permit. And so there was a lot of in-depthness there. In fact, we have several rules of Stormwater Awareness Week. Is one, no money changes hands anywhere. We don't charge you to participate. The people who present don't get charged. There is no money, literally, that changes hands. Now, not to say that Stormwater Awareness Week is free and doesn't cost money. Yes, it costs the people who are presenting quite a bit, because it's their time and energy, and they put a lot of labor into it. So it does cost something, but there's no charge. The other rule we have that goes along with this is you're only allowed a 5-minute self-promotion. Where our rule is 55 minutes of education, 5 minutes of self-promotion is fine. So if the main focus is just self-promotion, then sorry, doesn't count as continuing education. But if the main focus is learning how this treatment system works, or learning how this erosion control method works, then that does count. Reading unrelated and questionable technical journals. Trying to come up with some ideas here without getting too silly. Maybe saying, well, I'm going to read Field and Stream, fishing magazine, because, rivers cause erosion and fish are in rivers. And no, that would definitely be questionable. So no, probably not. Learning from a mentor. Not sure what they meant by that. In fact, I don't know if I agree with it, but I don't make the rules. So that's their rules. And if we're going to be a CPESC or SESWI or CPSWQ and want to have count PDHs, we need to follow their rules. I think learning from a mentor could be very valuable, but with this group, you can't count it as a PDH. All right, and documentation that they require. Okay, again, we get this asked a lot, and people are asking for a certificate. There's various reasons why they might need a certificate or want a certificate. But let's understand what this particular organization requires, and we found this to be pretty consistent of all the others too. For an organized event, a certificate of participation, or a completed, and notice it says or a completed Environmental Cert International Learning Event Form, which is basically a one-page paper that you provide the date, you provide the name of the event, you provide the location, online, in person, where was it? You provide a little summary, like a short paragraph of what you did, what you learned, what it was about. And I think you sign it. It's pretty much that simple. If there's any other information on there, it's not much more than that. So it's pretty simple. Now, typically, I will do that for most of my PDHs. Plus, then, like if you're counting a Stormwater Awareness Week workshop, that email you got for each workshop, you get one per workshop, and we do that on purpose. It's for this. There's attached a PDF ticket that has the login information, it has the description of the workshop, the name of the workshop, the date and time. Just attach it to that form as backup. You can always, and the other thing is, all of these workshops that we offer during Stormwater Awareness Week are being recorded. And you check back at our website, in 1 to 2 days after the workshop. It'll be linked there. You could even provide a YouTube link to the certifying organization of the workshop you attended in. In fact, they might even see your name on the sidebar in the video. So yeah, that's the type of backup you need for self-study. It's also, they have a single page form for that. For learning developer, this is someone who's developing a workshop or a class. They have a separate form, or you can provide the event registration. So let's say you're going to speak at an event and they have an agenda and you're number 3 in the agenda, and there's your name. You could give that agenda as your backup for that, or something else that they provide. So yeah, I've been doing this for over 10 years now, 12, 13 years now. And I've never had a question. So it's as long as you follow this guidance, that you should be fine. Okay, another group, another organization, I should say, is now it's called Ecopliant. They just changed in the last year or so, and it's the folks who oversee the Certified Inspector of Stormwater Erosion Control, or no, Certified Inspector of Sediment Erosion Control, CISEC. And here's from their website what they require or will allow for PDHs. So they do have volunteer-related activities, such as a trash cleanup, planting of trees, trail rehabilitation, also serving on an Ecopliant program or committee. You can attend a professional forum, such as International Erosion Control Association Conference, StormCon, CASCA, American Public Works Association. They don't list out Stormwater Awareness Week, but we're probably one of those. Or we may be in the third bullet, attendance at an educational forum. It could be a classroom setting at your workplace or some other place, or in-house training, a tailgate session even, possibly. Lunch and learns, other trainings hosted in your community or at your company, or also by giving presentations and publishing papers and newsletters, that type of thing. Okay, so that's CISEC. So those are, the bulk of the underlying certifications are covered there. And of course, as we saw in our poll we ran, there are a few others out there, but they pretty much follow something similar to that. Now, in the new construction general permit to 2022, there is now a requirement to have continuing education. And it says to remain in good standing with their certification, QSDs and QSBs registered through CASCA. So that's not the self-certified folks, not the PEs and PGs. They shall complete 6 hours annually of continuing education on site assessment techniques, best management practice, design and implementation, inspection techniques, or monitoring approaches. This requirement can be fulfilled in whole or in part by continuing education taken to maintain any of the approved underlying prerequisites. So if you are a CPESC or a CISEC and you're meeting those PDHs, then chances are very good you're going to also meet the construction general permits. Now, notice though that the categories here in the permit are a little bit more restrictive as far as the subject material. Now, site assessment techniques, that would be like pollutant source assessment. That is actually a pretty broad category right there. BMP, design and implementation, that could be somewhat broad, but I could see a case where maybe one of the PDHs you're using for CISEC doesn't quite line up with this, but most of those organizations require more than 6. And so just make sure that you have 6 that meet these requirements right here. All right. So with that, let's get into some more creative ideas and into something a little less dull than talking about just the requirements. So I have 6 ideas that I want to present to you, and let's see how if any of these might tantalize you into maybe a new type of PDH. So one of them is what we did almost exactly a year ago. You can volunteer at a national park or other cool location. I took some of our crew here at WGR. We went to Yosemite National Park. We actually have currently 3 projects in the park, all restoration projects that we're doing the erosion sediment control. But I was talking to national park staff, their biologists and project managers, and going, you know what? Would you be interested in having some volunteers? We mostly did it because it sounded like a lot of fun, but how about allowing us to come volunteer? And so they said, yeah, we would take you. We have these areas that we're trying to restore, and they've either been degraded by just foot traffic from the tourists, or from vehicles, or from washouts or floods. And so we're trying to restore these areas, and we're planting in native plants to get good erosion control. And so we went and worked with national park staff, planting plugs that had been harvested from different places in the park. They also have crews that harvest native seed, and they have a off-site greenhouse where they grow the harvested seed and will germinate it. And so we were planting sedges and different even woody varieties of plants and grasses, and helping to stabilize eroded areas. And so it was a lot of fun. They put us up in the campground, in the volunteer campground. So you had your own exclusive campground, and we spent a couple of days, or 3 days and 2 nights in Yosemite National Park. And I mean, it was, October, it was beautiful. The scenery was amazing. I mean, here you're planting some erosion control measures, and you're looking up at El Capitan. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that. That is just so cool. And you know what? They'll take any volunteer. So if that's something that you think sounds cool to you, you can do that. And I think you might find that very enjoyable. Okay, another idea is do a self-study somewhere you always wanted to visit, but it needs to be about erosion and sedimentation. Okay, it needs to fit within your credential. So a place I had on my bucket list was Death Valley. In fact, I wanted to develop some training materials using Death Valley as a backdrop. And the self-study was, I bought a geology book on Death Valley and the Owens Valley that also talks a lot about the erosional features in the valley and what's caused them, like the alluvial fans, for example, and the slot canyons. And so we spent a week in Death Valley just basically exploring and playing, and it was amazing. I learned so much there. In fact, here's a little video clip from one of our outings. So the power erosion can be demonstrated right here. Here we have a outside bend, as we were talking before, that high velocity right here. So we got it moving here. You see how polished it looks. In fact, as we look, it almost looks smooth as it's going through here, bounces off here, hits this wall and turns back. But if you come over here and look back, you can see what's actually happening is it's not so much smoothing it, but it's actually plucking. And it's the velocity actually will pluck rocks right off the surface, actually creates a frequency, and it just disintegrates. In fact, you can see just the action right here of the erosion. So a different form of erosion due to high velocities. Here we're bottlenecked in the canyon, large flows coming down, bottlenecked here, high velocities creating erosion and very hard metamorphic rock. Pretty cool. All right, if you're familiar with Death Valley, that was actually in Mosaic Canyon. And here's another location we went and filmed. We're on Ventifac Ridge, which is just away from the entrance to Artist Drive here in Death Valley, along the Badwater Mountains. And this is just a knoll, basically a volcanic knoll that jets out into the valley itself. And so it's a rise, and it catches a lot of wind. But not only does it catch a lot of wind, but a lot of sand and silt is also caught by the wind and carried across this at pretty high velocities. And so here we get to see an example of wind erosion and the power of wind erosion. This is called Ventifac Ridge because the term ventifact means made by wind. And you can see just signs of the sandblasting, the pitting right here. As it crosses along the sides, it's just exposes a lot of the air tubules that were in the rock. And so you see the fluting alongside here. And so the wind's been hitting it here most recently from the north and headed south. And then on the lee side of the rock, you can see a lot of the sand that's been deposited. So it's on the wind-sheltered side of the rock. This has been deposited here. In fact, you even see some sand here. Now, the thing is, you also see pitting on this side of the rock because the wind doesn't always blow north to south in the valley. It can blow south to north. And so if that was happening, it would pit here, which we've seen here, and the sand would be deposited here. But in this example, we can tell most recently wind is blowing north to south. So this rock here has been whittled down by the wind, by the sandblasting action. How big was the rock when it started? Well, it's hard to say how big it was, how big it started, but nonetheless, it's part of that hourglass of the whittling down of this rock. The thing about erosion is it's always happening. It's constantly happening. Here's another great example of a ventifact. Noticing the vertical face right here, the facets right here, the pitting, just very classic. And then we have on the lee side the tailings, the pile of sand, the eroded material. Let's just talk a moment, not for the object that's being eroded, but let's talk about the material that it has eroded. Now, a very interesting thing. First off, let's look at the colors we see out here. You see this dark black basalt material. It's all igneous rock up here. We see other forms of igneous rock. Some might be more similar to a rhyolite. You see the pinks. You see some white, some lighter gray material. But let's take a close look at the sand and notice too that this sand is fairly uniform in size. And as we look real closely at the colors, comparing it to the palette I have around me, I see the pinks, I see the reddish materials, I see the dark basalt, I see the whiter materials, and it seems to be almost an equal blend of colors. So we're seeing the eroded object and the material that it was eroded from right here. So not only do we have source material coming from off-site, but this hillside is eroding away, and here it is right here. Again, the hourglass sands are falling right here, and it's from this right here. An example of erosion. All right, a third idea for creative PDHs is to attend a field day event. And this can be a really great option to, well, get some hands-on experience with BMPs and learn from those who have some experience in the industry. We have an event around here that we call BMP Roundup. We hold it typically in the spring or the fall when it's cooler. And we utilize our simulated construction site that's out back that we call our construction sandbox. And we have BMP set up that you typically see at a construction site. We have opportunities to install, to inspect, to do some maintenance on BMPs. And so the attendees can really get a good idea about what's involved, beyond paper, how to actually do it in the field. Now, my buddy John McCullough, he also has a opportunity, and that is he uses Shasta College in Redding, California, and they have a huge setup where they can do some really, large scale BMP implementations. And John, he is amazing. I have learned incredible things from John. He is so knowledgeable. And if you go to this erosion control summit, typically he holds it in April of each year. Typically it's a couple days long. And
this engaging 2-day workshop teaches you
how to
install
Great, thank you.
and inspect BMPs. Spend time with industry professionals, product manufacturers, and erosion control experts to learn the latest in erosion control BMP practices. With instruction both in the classroom and in the field, you will understand the BMP selection process, all while being taught about the importance of drainage, infiltration, rooting depth, grading for erosion control, and some steep slope applications. More than ever before, your BMPs must be effective, and after the 2022 Erosion Control BMP Summit, you will walk away with hands-on experience with erosion control equipment and products, build relationships with suppliers and industry professionals, and learn the latest and greatest best practices of erosion control. Register today at dirttime.tv.
All right. So, that's my buddy John McCullough, and he does a good work up there at Shasta College. He's got a lot more space than we have, so he can do some cool stuff. But usually it's in April of each year. I highly recommend going, and I think it's usually a couple of days, I believe. So go to Dirt Time, just Google Dirt Time, and you can check that out. But it's an awesome way to get some really good hands-on experience. And I tell you, the stuff he teaches in his class, you will not learn anywhere else. So I highly, highly recommend it. All right. And then the other thing is, you know what? How about you putting on a workshop? You do it. Yeah, you can. Now, you might not have a construction sandbox like we do, but you can get creative. You can find a construction site. If you're a municipality, you can go to a courtyard or something like that. And so definitely, consider that. And one of the best ways to learn is to teach. In fact, how I judge a really good workshop, and we've had some really good workshops this week, is how I judge a really good workshop is when I learn something. As the presenter, I learned something. Like yesterday, we were doing that keynote with the water board. It was like, whoa, I learned a ton in this one. So putting on your own workshop is a great way to get PDHs and make it fun. We get people get their hands on, and when you get a bunch of people together and you've got them working together, you have fun, you learn, and and you can also eat well. Rebecca, who's on helping us organize Stormwater Awareness Week, she's also our caterer. So she usually will make us a gourmet meal. So you can have a lot of fun. Life shouldn't be boring. Your job should not be boring. Getting PDHs should not be boring. Make it fun. Another idea is take an interesting online class. And there's options, a lot of options out there. We're not the only ones who provide interesting online classes. Now, there are those that aren't so interesting, okay? So steer away from those. But there are some really well-produced things out there. We do have a service we call Forge. It's you can just Google that, Forge, or go to wgr-sw.com and click on training. We created this actually for this very reason, to provide PDHs. People needed PDHs. They were always asking us, where do I get PDHs? And so after they asked us so many times, we said, hey, why don't we create some and have some fun doing it. So we went to the Grand Canyon and we shot a whole series on erosion theory. And this was really cool too. So here, let's take a look at this. Hopefully this will play.
Erosion. It's a process that many people take for granted. Actually, it's a process that breaks down granite and other types of soil. But what is erosion? Erosion is when particles become detached. On a small scale, it's really not that impressive, but on a large scale, it's as impressive as the Grand Canyon itself.
All right, and we got about 5 hours that we filmed in the Grand Canyon that you can watch. Let me get this back into PowerPoint. And then not only did we go to the Grand Canyon, but we went to Yosemite. As you're probably catching on, I'm a national park junkie. I love national parks. And so we filmed a series on restoration, and here's just a snippet from it.
Ralph Waldo Emerson says that things refuse to be mismanaged long. An exception would seem to be found in the case of our forests, which have been mismanaged rather long, and now come desperately near being like smashed eggs and spilt milk. Still, in the long run, the world does not move backward. The wonderful advance made in the last few years in creating 4 national parks in the West and 30 forest reservations, embracing nearly 40 million acres. And in the planting of the borders of streets and highways and spacious parks in all the great cities, shows the trend of awakening public opinion.
All right, and that's our Restore series. Okay. So yeah, watch some creative videos that show you and teach you, take you places that you would not otherwise go, to show you about erosion, sediment, restoration, and related topics to your certificate. Now, that Yosemite video was a lot of fun making. We got actor Lee Stetson, who also played John Muir for the Ken Burns National Park documentary that you can see on Amazon. He played John Muir for us, and in fact, in the video series, all of the words that he speaks are word for word out of John Muir's journals, and so it was really cool doing that. And basically, what we're trying to answer in that video series is, when it comes to restoring things, when do humans need to get involved, and when do we just let nature do its thing? And so if you want to find out what we learned, watch that video series. And of course, the 6 ideas, what you all are doing currently. Attend a Stormwater Awareness Week workshop. In fact, how about next year, you put on a workshop, and basically all you have to do is prepare a talk, contact us, contact Rebecca, and say, I want to host. And we do all the rest. You prepare your talk, you show up, you give your talk, and everything else we take care of. And so maybe that's something you would consider next year. All right. Well, I told you we have a few minutes left. I want to hear from you. We got a small enough class. We got 25 people on. What's some of your favorite PDH things that you've done in the past? What's been some of the highlights, or has it always been just a grind and kind of boring? Anybody have anything creative you've done? Something you were like, yeah, that was a great experience. Who wants to share? Anybody? You can unmute yourself. Got to have somebody who's done something cool.
Hey, Sam Hopstone here. This isn't super cool. I'll say medium grade, interesting. Still online PDHs, but I'm a member of the American Society of Civil Engineers, and they have some folks that do, they do PDHs on like a cool project that they completed in a year. Levee replacements or like science experiments on dewater. Using new using new materials for construction dewatering and just dealing with sediment and ports and coasts. Those are the ones I can remember from last year. But just project summaries. It kind of goes hand in hand with technical journals and articles. Just it's like show and tell, so it can be a good time.
Awesome. That's a great idea. In fact, if some of us occasionally we get to work on a really cool project. And so making that into a tech talk is a great thing. And it doesn't have to be all your project. Maybe you just had a slice of it. Like what we do at Yosemite, we're one of, many people who are working on it. But, I can talk about it from my perspective, and it's super interesting to people. So yeah, good feedback. Yeah, that's a great idea. Anybody else done something really good? Went to a really good demonstration? Anybody willing to share?
Well, I didn't do much, but I've participated in Lodi's replanting of various parks. There was this Lodi Park and Recreation Board that got together to plant some trees. So I did that for a couple days, and that was a lot of fun every morning for a week.
And that can count. That certainly count. In fact, I thought I saw Kathy Grant on this call. And Kathy, I'm not going to let you get away without talking. Kathy, are you here? Or is that a different Kathy G?
It's a different Kathy G.
Oh, sorry. I thought it was Kathy Grant. But sorry to put you on the spot. But yeah, the Kathy Grant was a city of Lodi who Mary Kate was talking about. I'm sure Kathy Grant was behind that tree planting. She does so many things. In fact, she's got a workshop tomorrow called Meet Your Watershed. And you might be really surprised at what's in that. In fact, what she's inviting you to do in that workshop is actually attend an actual watershed meeting. It's a regularly scheduled meeting that they're inviting Stormwater Awareness Week participants to join and to be a part of this. So Kathy Grant with the city of Lodi, she basically, even before she worked with the city, she was basically a homeschooling mom, and she had a passion for clean water. And she started working with students and then public school students, and she organized a group called Stormwater Detectives, and they do all sorts of citizen monitoring. And now I think the city of Lodi here in California has probably the premier educational program to students that I've seen anywhere in the country. It is absolutely amazing. So if you ever get to go to one of her workshops or get to talk to her, she's got lots of creative ideas on how to get your PDHs. Anybody, well, let's see, we got some chats here. Go ahead.
This is Marlis White with the Port of Los Angeles. Usually annually after Stormwater Awareness Week, I teach like a couple of day classes for about 2 hours, but it's a combination of videos and interactive different assignments. I actually give them assignments and exam on, just field inspection sheets, or like show, like you said, some of the pictures of construction sites, but it's interactive. So it changes it up. I may show a little video and then, talk a little bit more about different types of inspection or things that our field team needs. But it's interesting. It's not just 1 to 2 hours of straight videos.
Yeah, good. Thank you for sharing. And exams are really useful, especially some people do a pre-quiz and then they'll do a post-quiz to measure change in learning and see how much people learned from that activity. Thank you for sharing. And let's see, I got some that have typed it in. Ariel from City of Raleigh. We are working on revamping our Raleigh Stormwater University. This gave great ideas for PDHs and getting out in the field. Awesome, awesome, good. And I really enjoy, Alicia, I really enjoy the annual Salt Lake County Watershed Symposium and the American Public Works Association's Fall Conference. Yeah, and yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. A lot of local watershed groups have symposiums or have actually even field days. Those are really, really good events. There's also here in California, the Coastal Cleanup Day. That might actually be national, where you can join a local chapter or local group that's doing a cleanup activity. So, all right. Well, we are just about out of time. So I want to thank you for being a part of Stormwater Awareness Week. And hopefully you enjoyed this. I have my contact on the screen. As we've been saying, we have a saying around here that advice is free over coffee. So you call me up anytime, say, John, we need to talk, pour yourself a cup of coffee, and I won't send you an invoice. All right. Thank you again, and we'll see you in one of the next workshops.